En espérant que ça marche. Donc je vais juste faire une introduction rapide. So first of all, once again, I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the MacFest 23 Symposium. So it's a collaboration between the National University of Vanuatu and the MacFest Festival. Donc un petit mot introductif pour vous souhaiter la bienvenue à nouveau de la part donc, de l'Université nationale de Vanuatu et de la part du comité MacFest, du festival. I'm not going to be long, anyway we are a little bit behind, donc je ne vais pas être très longue, on est un petit peu en retard. C'était simplement pour vous rappeler les thèmes et pour vous annoncer les petites modifications sur le programme. Just a short introduction to remind you the themes that we will talk about during the symposium, and also just to let you know of the slight changes we had to do on the program. Yesterday we had amazing speeches from the Minister of Climate Change and Acting Minister of Education, Ralph Regenvanu, and also from the Vice Chancellor of the National University of Vanuatu. And they both grasped the spirit of this symposium. Donc hier, nous avons déjà eu des discours introductifs du ministère du Changement climatique et du ministère de l'Éducation, M. Ralph Regenvanu, ainsi que du président de l'université, qui ont tous les deux réussi à capturer l'esprit du symposium. 3 thèmes pour ce symposium qui sont rappelés ici. Donc comment les arts et la culture du XXIe siècle façonnent une voie mélanésienne contemporaine, culture, éducation et résilience climatique, et sauvegarder le futur des arts et de la culture de la Melanesia. So we have 3 themes that are here, you know them all, and the idea of this symposium is not to only organize an academic event, but really to try to bring together artists, writers, scholars, but also students and anyone who would be interested in learning more or contributing in art and culture. And obviously we'll also talk about topics that are related to these two main contributor of what is a society and human beings. Donc rapidement, nous allons aborder des thèmes autour de la culture et les arts, et l'importance de ce symposium, c'était pas seulement de faire un événement scientifique, mais c'était vraiment de faire collaborer des artistes ensemble, des écrivains autour du thème des arts et de la culture. Just quickly, we had to change a few things, just to let you know, because it might be slightly different, and we are starting a bit late. So if you don't mind, we will go for the lunch at 12:15 instead of what has been announced here, 11:30. And then it's going to be a shorter break. Donc on va juste raccourcir un petit peu la pause déjeuner pour pouvoir avoir tout le monde. Une petite modification, nous avons ici la contribution de Francis Hickey. So the last presentation here before the tea break, Francis Hickey is different, I believe, than what you had. And then tomorrow as well, we're going to have 2 video presentations. And we have Matthias Kovac as well, that just joined the symposium. And we are lucky also to have the PNG delegation and the Fijian delegation that will come to talk about, respectively, for the PNG delegation, the cultural policy of PNG 2021-2031, and for the Fijian delegation to talk about language and culture in Fiji. All right. Donc on aura les délégations de Papouasie-Nouvelle-Guinée et de Fidji qui vont venir parler également, qui n'étaient pas dans le programme. La Papouasie-Nouvelle-Guinée va parler de la politique culturelle de la Papouasie 2021-2031. Et la délégation fidjienne des langues et des cultures à Fidji. I think that's all. I just also wanted to remind you that it's for each speaker, you have a slot of 25 minutes, roughly 15 minutes presentation and then 10 minutes question. We have moderators. Our first moderator this morning is going to be Anna Naupa, and so please try to stick to this timing, otherwise we'll be too late and we're going to have to stop you. Donc s'il vous plaît, respectez le temps qui vous est imparti de 25 minutes, 15 minutes pour la présentation, 10 minutes pour les questions. Then also, we're lucky to have a Pacific Connection, Margaret Russet, who is providing us with simultaneous translation. And as you might have seen or you might have used, you have headset and all the equipment. But please do remember to bring this back as soon as you leave the room to make sure that nothing is loose, and then you can take the next equipment for the next session and so on. Donc on a la chance d'avoir Margaret Russet qui fait la traduction en simultané. Et si vous pouvez penser à déposer les casques à la fin, le matériel, afin d'éviter que ce soit perdu, et puis ensuite vous les récupérez pour la prochaine session. Alright, I think that's it. I wish you a very fruitful and rich symposium. I'm sure the discussion will be amazing. I'm very, very happy that we have managed to combine such great presenters for this event. Very happy to see you all here. Welcome again, and enjoy the symposium. Bon symposium à tous, et merci beaucoup d'être là.
Hey, bonjour, c'est Monen. Feeling energy? Woo! Okay, so by Mimi introduced, I will introduce Bakabina. If he could please make his way up to the podium. We have a number of presentations this morning, as Leslie has said, and it is wonderful that we're kicking off the symposium with a discussion about how do we tell our stories in Melanesia. And so Mr. Bakabina is the Commonwealth Short Story Finalist for 2022 from the beautiful country of Papua New Guinea. And he is going to share with us this morning the journey of writing Melanesian stories. Please come. I will be sitting here with my timekeeper.
Sorry, I put this flag up in the head because I've been asked 5 times where I'm from. But I'm from Vanuatu. So now that I've made a statement, this can go out here. So everybody knows where I come from. I can get it done in 15 minutes. 1 minute on each of those so that I can get it done in 15 minutes. But it's not going to be the whole paper, just the 15 slides that I'm going to talk about, and then I'll let you to read the paper. All right. My name is Barakovepina, and I'm a lauto. It's a Papuan word for an old man. And when I go through the paper, you'll be able to understand why I call myself a lauto, because it imposes responsibilities on me. As an elderly in my tribe, that I've got what I'll speak to you about. So I've just realized that I'm a lauto, and before I got it, in Papua New Guinea we write kids and we don't get any recognition because we've got to look outside of the country, and those are some of the places that have been given us as a platform to talking about West Papua, the TI, the South Sea Islanders, the Indigenous Australians, Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomon Islands, and of course Papua New Guinea. All right, next slide please. Okay, I'm writing. I started writing a long time ago, but in 1996 I got my first work published, and then it just made me crazy. I've got to write. So I've been writing since, writing stories about me as a young person growing up So in my 100,000 words that I put in print, 200,000 words, I've written about what happened in the village, and in there tried to bring in culture. Small snippets of it, not a whole lot. Because if you want to write about culture, it's a different whole thing altogether. So I just introduce snippets of it. So in one of the stories, you'll find a little bit, and then the next story, you'll find a little bit, and the next story, a little bit. And like I said, Lauto, I have a responsibility to introduce it to my children. Dr. Sui says, and here's what he said, the more you read, the more things you will know, the more you learn, the more places you'll go. That's good for a Western society. But I think we should change it to say the more you hear of your stories, the more you will know, the more you will learn of your culture, the more you will be proud of who you are. A lot of us just came up with a flag up here, and I'm saying that I'm a Papua New Guinean. But there are other things that I need to know to be said that I'm a Papua New Guinean. I need to know my language, I need to know my culture, I need to know all these other things that make me a Papua New Guinean. So as a writer, for the future, that's what we need to impart to our children. Unfortunately for our children, we give them mobile phones, and our culture is going to cry foul for it, because they don't know what it's like. Firstly, they don't know what the story is like. You ask them what I went through several schools before I came here, and I said, do you know what the face of the coconut is, and do you know what the story is behind it? They looked around and didn't know anything. So nobody's been telling them our stories, and I know the whole of the Oceania region, the stories about how the coconut got its face. So if your children today don't know the story around it, then you're lost and I'm lost. Oceania is lost. Okay, next slide, please. So the Malaysian child is losing big time because he's not hearing the stories. So who tells them the stories? The Lautos like me make sure that they impose it upon the children, the parents. Every adult in Melanesia and in Oceania has a duty to tell his children his stories. If he hasn't told them that, then he's going to go back and look for it. Because if you don't tell your children, what stories are they going to tell tomorrow? I had that problem, so I'm doing my best to write it down for my children. What I write in Goroka, where I come from, is not the same as in Manus, or the same in the Papuan coast. My Goroka culture, my Goroka language is unique to me and my people. So just because you've got one Papuan writing about his own culture doesn't mean that all of Papuan is writing about it. Papua New Guinea has 860 languages, I think. So in all of that, if we don't tell our stories, that's the number of children that are missing out on stories. For every one language that we've got one child that is missing out. You multiply that, the math is out there for you to think about. I'm not going to go into the math of that. So the more you don't tell the children stories, the more they don't know about their culture, the more they don't know about themselves, they become lost. So I have, as a Lauto, as a person in Papua New Guinea, have an assignment, have a duty, have a moral obligation to tell my children stories about my place. I don't need to go and tell them about Vanuatu. What is Vanuatu to them? Okay? You don't need to tell them about, if you're from here, you don't have to tell them about Luganville or the Pentecost Islands. That's for the Pentecost Islands and the Luganville to do. Tell their own children to their own children. You tell your own children your own stories. So if you don't know your stories, you're not going to pass your children any stories. So they will not pass any stories to their children. And the thinking around what it would be like, I don't want to go into that problem. Next slide, please. So what do I do? The European literature, the world one says that you've got to have a protagonist and an antagonist. I don't understand. I'm not a literature guy. I'm just a writer. So those mechanics of writing in modern Western literature is different. In Pacific Islands, we write stories told about community. The Western literature talks about an individual person and what it goes to another. So where does that fit in? We're going to school and we're learning about being individual and hearing stories about being individual. Where an individual person goes through, is the main character, he goes through, and then there is a climax at the end and you have a resolution. And that's all of that, that's about that, individuality. So for us, where do you find that? We have to tell stories about our community. There is no highs and lows. If there is a stone in the middle of the sea and we want to know what we still tell stories about how that stone gets there. There is no drama about it. We just explain and tell our children stories of how that stone happened to be there in the middle of the ocean and why there's a name. And it's a community that is wanting to know about that. As I said earlier, I'm trying to bring in a new concept, is to say, okay, how do I write for the individual person and for the community? So how do I match that together? Okay, I try to create a story out, and if you read my stories, they are like that. I'm writing for an individual person, but also have this community involvement, community ideals that I want to put in place. All right. So therefore, we have a compromise between the two. My stories are Goroka based from my own people. I don't have to write again, as I said, I don't have to write about another person's story. I write my own stories. So all my characters are this place called Goroka. Goroka, if you don't hear of the madmen, the Asaro madmen, I live around there. Okay, so that's where my stories are based. Next, please. The child they're carrying the bill on her head. That's part of our culture and whatnot. But there is a story reason why she has to have that bill on her head. And we teach them, the girls from right early age, that they've got to have a bill on their head. So with the bill on her head, she's got to carry the firewood and she's got to carry the baby in the other arm. And she can be able to balance a food product at the back of and walk up. And some of those mountains that you have to walk up are so steep that you wonder how they may have camel foods up there on their legs. So we've got all these cultures that we have got in the Oceania region, in the Pacific, the Melanesian, and my guesstimate is that there are 2,500 languages and cultures. It's all of that from West Papua all the way up here. My thinking is that if we had one story from each culture, we need an anthology that would run about 20 anthologies a year. But all of those cultures have 100 stories. So if you have 100 stories that we can all get together in the anthology, we could fill up a library. There is no need to bring in Western books. There is no need to bring in Cinderella. There is no need to bring in Snow White. We can have our own stories and we can work with them. Right. But my call out is to writers. You may have a job. You may have a daytime job. I have a daytime job. That's my job that brings in my food for the house. I write because I know that my children don't know my stories, so I try to put it for them. So they keep on telling me, the stories tell the Goroka in you, you bring it out. Okay, we can move on. Next slide. So I also write it where I want to have aha moments in the stories. So when another person reads my stories, they can say, hey, yes, I think I've got that in my culture too. They can look at what I do, and then they can be able to say, this little bit, okay, I can relate to that. I hope that will then start them to write their own stories around that. So I write it in a way where I use a lot of dialogue so that we can be able to bring that aha moment out. And then I give some examples of that. In Love for a Graduation Present, there is a scene where the young student that have graduated from school, she realized that she's pregnant, and then all the social obligations that I imposed on her, I try to bring that out. In that, so that's a cultural thing, but she needs to know. And I hope that a young school reader can read it and say, okay, I don't want to go into that situation. I'm going to put a stop to that. They had chuk-chuk. It's my own personal story. I went coffee picking and then ended up walking out with a chicken that ran wild in the plantation. So, but there were cultural implications there. I couldn't necessarily walk away with it. All right. Okay. Anna wants to get rid of me. So, all right. So, I've just talked with those incidents of the stories that I read. I've published 10 books online. You Google my name and you can see all the stories there. So if you need to look them up. Unfortunately, I don't have it in French. So I need somebody to assist me, or in Bahasa Indonesia. So we'll have to think about it. But what I do is I do short stories, do a collection of them, and then publish an anthology. And I've done 3, while I'm still doing novels. I've got 3 novels, 3 anthologies. I'm working on my epic novel, which is how in my place we find a wife for my son. I've got to find a wife for my son. So I detail the process. And it's anthropological studies, but I'm trying to write it in a way that it can be interesting, it can be a novel, it can be a story. And in it, all the cultures that you go through, I try to lay it out. I hope I can publish it by the end of the year. It's 500 A4 pages. So I'm working on the edits on it. Thank you very much.
What an amazing story. Thank you. Please, Baka, please stay. We have about 10 minutes for questions. So if you have a question for Baka, please put up your hand, and we have a roaming microphone. Okay, there's a question over there at the back. We might take a couple of questions at the same time. So if anyone else has a question, please put up your hand. Okay, and at the front again after Teresa, and over here with the gentleman.
Hi, thank you, Baka, for the presentation. I was wondering, with PNG not having a lot of support for writers and that whole industry, how do you find an editor to check your work and like the process with balancing your day job? Is there a specific house, a publishing house in PNG that you?
No, there's no. I'm self-publishing on KDP, but I do self-edit. It's just fortunate on my part that I've got a better grasp of English, so I do a lot of self-edit. It's not that good. Like I said, and I'm not a literature student. So I have a lot of problem with edits and things like that. My stories, if you read, the mistakes are glaring there, then you can be able to see in them. I don't have the compass in the right place, the apostrophe is in the wrong place. All of those things that, and a purist, English purist will look at it and throw my manuscript out the door. It does happen. A lot of Melanesians don't know how to stop. We start the sentence with end. And we don't know how to paragraph. So I'm doing a lot of mentoring up in the schools in Papua New Guinea, and I try to teach that, and I've got a skill set for that. But for the other writers, no, we don't have any editors. We've got a couple of editors in Australia that, for me, I've got Ed Bramby, who spent time in Papua New Guinea, is doing that for me. But I give him a finished product. I don't want to give him something that I've started, and he has to rewrite my story. That's the problem with the editors that we have, that they want to rewrite our stories, and I don't want them. So I want to give a product that I think is comfortable. If you can correct me with the English and put the English words and write about, but the ideas that I want to bring across to everyone should be there. I do a lot of self-edit. My children are critics for my, why not they look at it and say, that we don't understand this. Or what you say here means this one. And I said, did you mean that to us? So they do that things for me. But I do a lot of self-edit. And yes, editors are very few on the ground. And it's a call out to anybody that wants to provide editorial assistance. We cannot pay for the editorial services, unfortunately. But if you say a question that you want to help us, put your hands up and we'll bring our work to you. But my suggestion is for those writers is to self-edit, make sure that it's proper, correct, that you think is correct before you go to the editor who can edit and rewrite your story, unfortunately.
Thank you. As long as comprehension is there.
Thank you. We have a question here at the front with Lena and then the gentleman, and then we'll thank Baka.
Thank you, Tomas. Baka, my name is Lena Isnoa Mani Vanuatu. I live in New Zealand and I'm a writer as well, but far and few in between. I haven't published a lot of books, but I do maintain a blog online, a private blog, which I try and write about my own culture and custom. I'm very inspired and empowered by your talks, especially your publications of the many books already. What an enlightenment for the next generations of Melanesians today, and we will try to maintain that going forward because a lot of our history is oral. And so my question is basically related to the other sister over there who has asked about an editor, but also about how you actually fund this, because this is a journey of writers that is not cheap. It is expensive and it is time consuming and it needs a lot of editing as well. But I'm glad to hear that you have managed to reach out to Australia, who's our neighbour, to do that for you. But you're very reliant on your own self-editing skills. So thank you for enlightening us on that. So I don't have a question anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like Oceania, the Melanesian, to have the 2,500 Pakapinas, the people who can do it, because genuinely our stories are going to die in the next generation, because we'll replace them with mobile phones.
Thank you, Baka.
Speak loud.
Speak loud and speak, but you're from Colonia, speak in Colonial.
You will not.
I've got a good translator here, so.
You just say in your speech that you're writing short novel and you talk about aha moments. Can you explain more about the aha moments? Because
the aha moments are that when you read my stories and you reflect on your own growing, because I'm writing about growing up, and you can then be able to, so the fun thing, okay, we in the village, we don't have ropes, we've got swings, jungles, we go to the jungles, cut them. Okay, you can swing for a good number of times, and then there's a limit to it, there's a use by date to that rope. And what happens when you swing and then it goes and breaks and you fall out in Papua you've got marathas all over the place, these bananas, and they got spikes on them. So if you crash in there and you have a child that is knocked out, well, you've got to revive him. And how do you do it? You do all the magic, you do all the puripuris. That's the thing I wanted to say. Aha! In my culture, in my place, we used to do that. Somebody has an accident, we would try to revive him and do something like that. That's the aha moment that I want others to say, okay, relate. And we used to have that like this. Or you know, spear diving and somebody gets speared in the middle of the sea, what do you do? Those type of aha moment that, okay, he's got that in his culture. I think I've got this in my culture. And that's the type of aha moment that I'm talking about.
Thank you, and I know we will have many, many more questions for Bakabina, but please join me in thanking him with the show. And we're going to, you can also hear Baka present some of his works this evening at the Carver Literature event at the Alliance Française from 6 o'clock onwards, as well as again on Friday afternoon, again at the Alliance Française at 6 o'clock. and schools are very lucky they're going to be having him visit and share his stories too. So thank you, Mas. So I'd like to invite up to the stage next is Esther Haluk, and I think she's coming up to the stage with some colleagues to share her presentation on Songs of Silence, Nyanyan Sunyi. And Esther has travelled all the way from Jayapura in West Papua. We're very fortunate to have her here in Vanuatu sharing her stories about how arts and culture can shape a contemporary Melanesian way in her part of Melanesia. Please show appreciation to Esther.
Thank you for the very precious moment that I have to be here and present what I have done so far. And I would like to read some of the texts that I have prepared according to the theme. Arts and culture shaping a contemporary Melanesian way. In West Papua, the situation has been deeply impacted by oppressive colonialism, which has posed significant challenges for the indigenous West Papuans. Throughout the period of colonial rule, we, the indigenous people of West Papua, have faced looming threat of losing our precious cultural identity. The influx of foreign influences has resulted in the disappearance of many indigenous languages, significantly diminishing the once vibrant linguistic diversity of the region. Sadly, out of the 278 West Papuan indigenous languages, several have already vanished due to the forces of colonialism. Adding to the wars, deforestation, land grabbing, and illegal logging have only worsened the situation, leading to the erosion of cultural practices and cherished traditions that have been passed down through generations. The loss of vital traditional medicine practices and knowledge is yet another heart-turning consequences of enrichment of external forces. As if that were not enough, the plight of the West Papuan has resulted in the painful experiences of forced displacement. Military operations have forced some of us to flee for our ancestral lands, customary regions, villages, and homes. A staggering 67,000 displaced persons have sought refuges in the mountains or neighboring areas, all in an effort to survive and protect their life and also living families. However, amidst these arduous challenges, the importance of arts and culture take the center stage. They possess the power to safeguard and rejuvenate the unique Melanesian heritage, offering a ray of hope to communities seeking to reclaim our identity and fortify our cultural resilience. Through the creative expression of arts and culture, the West Papuan people can find solace in their shared history and work together to nurture a contemporary Melanesian way that honor our cherished past while embracing the promise of shaping a brighter future for generations to come. My poetry collection, Nyanyian Sunyi, or in Bahasa, or translated in English as a silent song, was published in 2021. And this title was inspired by a song sung by Arnold App, a leading culturalist, songwriter, and founder of well-known musical group in West Papua named Mambesak, which means the bird of the paradise. The cultural movement throughout West Papua began when the Mambesak group started collecting traditional songs from every part of customary regions all over Papua and adding modern tastes in which made all the songs become very popular at their time. This cultural movement was forced to stop in 1984 when the leader, Arnold Ab, was assassinated by the Indonesian Special Army Forces named Kopassus. His activities were considered dangerous in planting the seed of pride feeling for our cultural identity. Why I choose this title, Silent Song? Because in our experience, it has been from 1963 up to now, we are still crying out about things that is happening to us. And now, the biggest problem that we are having right now is the losing of identity. This is why this work is also a part of recording the impact of things that is happening to us. This is the book I have. This is the first book I published, poetry book that I have. And this is also the way for me. I'm an activist as well, and also women who are involved in a church. And I'm the secretary of the church, women department in my church. But and this is very long experience that we have, and I want to record it. I want to put it so the next generation can have clear evidence of what was happening in our society nowadays. And this is also, when I wrote this is also the effort that I'm making in telling the Indonesian. This is actually one of the effort for me to tell the Indonesian, because journalists are not allowed to enter West Papua, and they do not know. Even Indonesia, they have to know about things, because the news or this television do not report or do not broadcast things that is happening. So this is also one thing that I use to tell the reader, the Indonesian reader, of what is happening in West Papua. They call us as a part of Indonesian, but these things is happening. So this is, I use literature, I use literary works to tell the world about what is happening. I will read two of my work. My poem, the first one, the title is Dark History. My life story is dark, a pitch dark as the petals of a black orchid. With a rare and scarce beauty, diligently chased by evil and greedy hunted eyes, I'm not deliberately imposed my life story. It's an unpleasant tale to display. The stench of blood and the smell of the scattered corpses are everywhere. It's an insufferable stink, still constantly color the story of my country. Their short, stubby fingers with dirty fingernails are groping my mother's flesh and bones. Indeed, they are still trying to reconstruct and recompose my tales, without even once asking me what kind of life do I want. Keep on raping me while covering my mouth. fulfilling their animalistic desires. Listen, the flame of truth that you are trying to bury slowly unfolds. The truth looks bright like the morning sun breaks through the darkness. Now I know who I am. Your sweet talking is useless. The barrel of your gun cannot wipe out the willpower. A strong wave of boldness growing inside me. Now I have decided to take out my pen, write my own story. I've seen that you've been writing the story of my life with the red blood ink. My blood and the blood of my relatives. Prepare yourself, get ready. I have made up my mind that from now on, it is my hand that is going to write the traces of my life. Write my own tale. I won't let you or anyone else writing my life story again. Thank you. That's the first poem. And Silent Road. Comrade, this is a long winding road. Was indeed desolate and lonely, but only conscience understands the value of truth, what the truth is. My mother's beauty often invite nocturnal beasts of light hunters. The point of light in the dark, in the flash of a fish's eyes full of hatred, with a cocked gun. They knock, they step on, and loot you. They line up, surround you with the armored trucks. When you scream and struggling back for your life, when to speak, you need permission from him. Freedom is your sine qua non. My friends, you are walking on a lonely path. Your presence has been hidden for a long time. Your existence has long been denied. The world cannot hear your cry. The world must not know about your sorrow. The world doesn't need to know about the crime they carry out, destroying your houses, falling the soul you greet as your mother. They don't care about your story out there. But you have to keep crying out loudly, no matter how hoarse your voice is. There are still pure souls out there who chooses the path of silence, who choose conscience to guide them out there, who will stand up with you, and this long and lonely road will not be a lonely road anymore. Thank you. To end this presentation, I would like to invite my brother to help me. I want to sing a song, Nyanyian Sunyi. Yeah, this is my brother Roni Kareni. He is a musician based in Australia. He's going to help me. Brother Roni, thank you. Syair yang menawan mengalun di
some time for questions and comments from the audience. I know for myself that was really powerful, and thank you so much for sharing what is a very personal and a very heavy journey for our brothers and sisters in West Papua. We have a comment here at the front, and I think the point from Esther about how literary arts and literary works can help bring out expression. So, sorry, there's one at the back and then one to the front, please. Thank you. And we'll probably take a couple first, and then we'll come to the floor.
Bonjour, Esther Aluc. Je me présente, je suis Poédi Prosper, je suis un petit chercheur sur les langues kanak en Nouvelle-Calédonie. J'ai entendu un peu votre intervention et j'ai entendu qu'il y avait 278 langues à Ouest Papua. Et je voulais savoir tout simplement comment ça se passe, la préservation de ces langues. Merci.
Thank you for the questions. As I said, we have many varieties of languages, local languages, but it's extinct. The reasons, the first one is because of there's no language users anymore. We have the problem of a genocide that is happening. We are now becoming a minority on our own land. In 1969, we have the same amount of population with Papua New Guinea, 800,000. But now, in 2000, the last data shown in 2020, indigenous West Papuan are 2.9 million only. And the total of the population, including the immigrants, are 2.5, around that number. So we are having the problem of genocide and also the military operation that is happening. And because the present situation now in West Papua, we have people who have to flee from their houses because of the military operation. We have 67,000 West Papuan. They have to move to other regions, other customary regions. And it also adds, because if you cut from your customs, from the environments that you know, and you move to a new place, and you don't know about people, it will adding the extinction of the language. So some languages have extinct right now. We also have family names. Some family names, it doesn't exist anymore because we have in Manokwari, there are only one with the family name, only one person left. So that's a real problem that we are facing right now back in West Papua. Thank you. Yeah, for preservation, so we are facing challenges in preserving our cultural identity. For example, if I mentioned in a speech about the land grabbing and also the deforestation, as an indigenous people, we have a really strong connection with our environment. But when we are cut from this connection, the land grabbed by outsiders, our trees are cut, the languages that shape our culture will extinct as well. So the problem that At the same time, we are facing many threats, challenges in economic sector, in all sectors. We are facing the human rights violation. So we are made confused with the surroundings that are happening. So it's really hard. Languages, to preserve, for example, to preserving languages, we are now divided into provinces, not according to our customary regions. It's based on what the government wants. So you can imagine the mix up with the culture. It's really hard. We are facing hard times. And we are now trying, I have discussed with some friends about how to preserve it, like storytelling, how to record. We already have some books about the legend, the story that's written, but it's not enough. We have festivals that is with the modern taste, but it's mixed up. It's not our culture anymore. We need to do something to preserve the identity, the indigenous identity. But now we are working hard on that. So many things that happen, so we cannot focus to do things like that. So that's the real situation.
Thank you. We have a question here at the front.
Esther, my name is Paulini from Fiji, and I must commend you for your innovative and creative the steps that you've taken to share the knowledge for those in Indonesia and those who don't know what's going on in West Papua through your poetry book. So my question, I guess, is two-part. First of all, what about distribution? It's a huge, huge responsibility to write the book. But then if you also have to be involved in distributing the book, that's another big responsibility. Is that something difficult? How do you get your poetry book into the hands of those who need to read it the most? And perhaps very quickly, if I can just slot in, is your life in danger? Is your book considered contraband? If people understood, if the certain authorities understood what you're trying to say? Thank you.
Yeah. For the distribution, I have limited resources, so I only publish, but it's only 200 books. But and I want to use that to find sponsors to help me to publish and republish my work to be distributed to and put in some part of Melanesia instead of Papua. So that's the reader that I intended to. And if my life is in danger, all the poems that I wrote in my books, because my background as an activist, I tell the truth. We have to tell the truth in form of literary work, in form of so people can know, the world can know what is happening. So, yeah, I know that's the price I have to pay for telling the truth. In the situation like this, we have to stand up and then we have to talk. So I choose this, and I'm preparing to write. I'm in the middle of writing my novels, and I will also going to describe everything through my eyes, what is happening, so the world can know. I think that's it can answer your question. Eh? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, big one, Esther. So let's give her a round of applause. Continuing on the theme of arts and culture shaping a contemporary Melanesian way, or as Minister Ralph Regan-Barney said yesterday at the opening, a Melanesian way forward. We are going to have two more speakers before we have the coffee break. We will be taking a shorter coffee break for those of you watching the clock to make up for the time this morning. So a great pleasure and honour to invite Millicent Bhatti from the Solomon Islands, who's going to share with us her story or her work called From Custom Storytime Tool to Custom Keepers, Designing a Decolonising Journey. So please join me in welcoming Millicent to the stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, my heart is still quite heavy following my sister Esther's presentation. Please give her another round of applause for so much courage and bravery. Okay, so before we start, we'd like for Toksave and acknowledge nama Bigman, Alfia, all others, and Okata ancestors, both past, present, and future. Lord, this is a place where you may come together as one Melanesian family for today. So, and thank you to Mastu Law Committee, Organizing Committee, and the National University Vanuatu for this opportunity, for having me here to be part of the 7th McFest Symposium. Me Millicent Bhatti, me blow Solomon Islands, and we are humble to us for come and talk story and share my journey and what it means to be rebuilding my Melanesia for hopefully what could be our common destiny. So just for reference, custom story time tool and custom keepers, these are the result of a decade-long passion to innovatively reintegrate traditional oral histories, or as we call it, custom stories, into the contemporary. I myself am a custom keeper. I am a culmination of Melanesian roots and Western experiences. So the very first time I learned how to weave, I was 5 years old. My grandmother, Koko Nena in the picture, she taught me in her warm leaf hut kitchen with 3 coconut fronds, 2 fala young one and 1 fala old one. As she warped and weft the leaves together, she uttered in our native Wala dialect, Milina, Fausia, Karan o Mangmelia Gauna o Lalamola Gali, which translates as, Millie, weaving will help you to understand the workings of the universe and find your place in it. Looking back at my own personal and professional journey, Koko Nena was not wrong. This concept of weaving was one of the fundamental custom teachings I received prior to my Western education. My very first teachers were my grandmothers from both my father and my mother's side, and our elders in the village. They have long since passed onto the other world. So to be very honest with you, I remembered very little of my custom education as it was happening. But my Koko always assured me every time that I would remember when I needed to know. She was also not wrong. Like that time as children when my cousins and I would go and pick up the fruit from the tree, I'd remind them to leave enough for the kurukuru bird and her children, because if we were being selfish, we would have nightmares at night. Or the time when I'm out snorkeling, enjoying beautiful Indonesia where I actually spent 10 years of my upbringing, I'd find a pebble that I really coveted in the sea, but I'd remind myself to swim back ashore, take one from the land, just to replace what I've taken as not to disturb the fish and their home. Or that time I found myself in stormy, treacherous seas on my way to film a documentary on climate change, disappearing islands on Melanesia province. We had these 10-foot waves that looked like they were going to swallow us whole. And all around me was just sheer fear on the faces of the crew that we were on. I would remember to close my eyes, take a deep breath, and silently call on my ancestor, the stingray, the one who saved me when I was almost drowned at 4 years old. This is me sitting at a table a few years ago with the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, with all his advisors, and we were having a discussion around the idea of establishing a separate UN Youth Office and a separate gender equality sort of undertaking under this office. I sat quiet the entire meeting, and then the moderator finally, towards the end, asked me what I had thought. In that moment, I remembered to share what my uncle from Akira has always shared with me, the proverb of the banana tree, which is the banana tree will naturally grow up and old, and it will naturally shred itself so that the young banana tree can have that conducive environment to bear fruits so it can flourish. I shared that custom proverb with the great minds around that UNDA table in hopes that they see that this old system needed to be re-engineered to allow the marginalized to grow within it and not separate from it. Last year, I also had the honor of meeting the former Mr. President Barack Obama, where in our discussion, we were talking about the defeats of democracy in the Melanesian context. But I'm not a politician, I don't know all the terminologies or jargons, but in our exchange, I was explaining to him why we needed to learn from the custom analogy of how we use and look after our canoes in order to rethink what democracy means for us with our customs at its heart. So looking back over my 32 years, I've been remembering and weaving all this time. And this is where I've been finding my place in the universe. And this is how I've defined what decolonizing means for me. It's a journey of unweaving and reweaving. So I share this long introduction because you see, many of us, we think that we've lost our customs and our traditional and cultural heritage. We think we've lost the knowledge. But if there's anything that you should learn from my experiences with my custom education in the first sort of 5 years of my life, is that I don't think we can ever lose something that is inherently written in our blood. The only thing we've lost, I believe, are the opportunities to reconnect in order to understand and actually learn from what our ancestors have left for us. So this is Custom Story Time 2. I'll use KSTT for short, but KSTT is a methodology where I combine or I weave in our custom stories or our storytelling practices with innovative graphics design to effectively bridge communication and knowledge gaps between rural communities, our government, and donors. So KSTT actually leverages our traditional way of understanding things, and it helps our people connect to be able to make informed decisions. So I have 5 minutes left, but the hypothesis for KSTT was simple. Given our low literacy rates in Solomon Islands, it's not for my people to change their way of acquiring knowledge, but the information can change for them. So I'll show you some examples of my work in the last 8 years, where KSTT has contributed to some advancements and positive impact in Solomons. So for example, for 2 national general elections, KSTT was used to design the civic awareness, and this is to help educate our people and connect them to their voting rights, the electoral processes, and UNDP actually did a test, and from a nationwide sort of comprehensibility study, the KSTT sort of design scored a 3.7 out of 4. Which is a record compared to 2.4 out of 4 from previous elections, which meant people, because a custom story time method was used, they actually understood the information more. This is also one of the voter campaigns I did, and this was to encourage more women to build confidence to participate in voting. So we recognize that 88% of women are registered to vote, but actually a very small percentage show up. So I ran a almost 2-year-long civic campaign, and this character was actually inspired by a common custom story of ours, which is the female snake with a diamond head. So I built this character Ruth. And in our 2019 general elections, the turnout for female voters was comparable to men. Of course, I can't completely take credit for that, but it's just an example to show that, you know, our way of acquiring knowledge through the custom way is still very relevant. Using, you know, our custom sort of notion of funerals where we must always contribute rice. This is how we managed to distribute 400,000 of our civic awareness campaigns for voting all across Solomons. So the Solomons has over 900 islands. And never in our history has there ever been any civic educational sort of awareness material that has reached every single part of Solomon. So this was key. Yeah, sorry. And also KSTT has been very successful in contributing towards advancing land settlements for 2 of our national infrastructure projects. So one is a Gina Hydro Dam, which is over there. And just through that, so if you look in the background, it's 7 pull-up banners. So each banner that you see there has a custom story to deliver what a hydro dam project is, how would it affect the community and the land. And also for our second tuna processing plant, this is where I worked with the chiefs to use their totems to help explain land laws, to help explain feudatory laws, and establish a trusteeship for the Bina Harbor project. These are just some examples of other civic awareness stuff. And ironically, KSTT, which is rooted in decolonization, had me receiving an award from my former colonizer. But she was very lovely. So yeah, just within, I'll try to rush through this, but within and through custom stories and the teachings, I was raised to find my own answers to what philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and our elders call the great questions of life. So this is, where do I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? Who am I? And what do I bring to society? And I feel like many in today's generation, many, especially our youth, the lack of opportunity to discover, explore, and seek answers to these questions. Our youth really need to be supported in untapping their indigenous identities, which can therefore build, I believe, self-determination. Because accessing custom education in order to reconnect is incredibly challenging in today's context. And this is where Custom Keepers comes in. Custom Keepers is a new organization that is being built currently, and it's grounded in this very essence that we would like to afford youth this access to custom education. Just very quickly, if you want to know more information, please come and speak to me. But the whole idea behind Custom Keepers is we aim to preserve, protect, and increase access to Melanesian custom stories, which is a catalog of indigenous wisdom and traditional practice. I just wanted to point story a little bit, Mama, in my 1 minute around our model, because it's very innovative in our eyes. But this is the Custom Keeper model. So at the top, it's our organization. But what we're trying to do is we're also trying to address the issues that surround traditional and indigenous knowledge. Issues such as the common practice around this is it's always been extractive and exploitative, and actually nothing comes back to our community who own these knowledges, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build capacity of young people. We're trying to train them up with multimedia skills so that they become the oral historians in their village. Then they work with their elders to record. And at the same time, we're building the Custom Cloud, which is an online platform where they can then upload all their collections to preserve and protect them. But going into the communities, what we're realizing is actually preserving indigenous knowledge, especially for vulnerable communities where they're heavily affected by sea level rise. Preserving traditional knowledge is the last thing on their mind. So what we're trying to do is build a revenue model within this and eventually become digital publishers. So what they do is they upload to our platform through different revenue streams. We get the hosting fee, and the rest comes back as royalties back to the community to support their climate resilience or revival of traditional knowledge and practices. So I think I will just stop there.
Anyway, we do have time for questions. We'll just have a shorter question time, but it was, I think, very privileged to have had such accomplished speakers and, from local to global, with your experience and achievements, so congratulations, and also with our very esteemed presenters prior to Millicent, with Esther, Haluk and Bakafina. So I'll allow some time for a question from the floor before we go to our final speaker for this morning's slot, and we will just be taking a shorter coffee break. So questions for Millicent, and I'm sure you have a million, and I'm sure she'll be generous in coffee breaks and around as well to share the fabulous work of customers. There's a question from the front here, please, the gentleman.
Okay, thank you very much. John Brief. Well, I'm interested in your work. Yes, of course, we as Melanesians, we put a lot of emphasis on the preservations and all this, and less on protection. The intellectual property aspect of our culture, which is, at the moment, the MSC is working on our framework on that, and we will not take a lead on having our laws now. We would like to see you have compared to Solomons and with the government to push that through. We have a problem with Nangol here in Vanuatu, which becomes a punchy jumping, we should get some royalties from that, but of course it's out of the country, so we can get hold of them. But you have raised an important issue, which I think you cannot do it on your own. You need to have a legal framework in place to properly regulate that aspect of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And most definitely, as we're fleshing out the Custom Keepers project, there's a lot of moving parts. So we've actually engaged 2 lawyers as well in the Solomons to help connect to Vanuatu, because your framework around intellectual property is a lot stronger than our non-existent one back home. So I'd love to talk to you some more after this. Yeah.
Thank you. So if we can join me in congratulating Millicent, and I'm sure we'll be around for some more discussions on what's a really fascinating and exciting journey. Our final speaker for this morning's session on arts and culture shaping a contemporary Melanesian way forward, I'll add in now, is Mr. Francis Hickey. Francis, if you could make your way up, please. Francis Hickey is a long-time traditional sailing, canoe, navigation aficionado. I'll just keep going, Francis. And is going to be sharing with us about the importance of acknowledging and supporting traditional resource management in Melanesia as part of our contemporary Melanesian way.
Bonjour tout le monde, and good morning. And a big thank you to everyone who's pulled this together at a very, very tricky time where everyone's moving and there's a lot going on. So congratulations. I can't see that. Okay. So basically, yeah, acknowledging and supporting traditional resource management in Melanesia. It needs the help. It's like all of our traditions, they're disappearing. And this is no exception. This is a deeply rooted tradition that started when people arrived. And I like to start with this slide because this chief from Gawa in northern Vanuatu, he's showing us a bouquet of plants. And each one, he explained very carefully. We were filming it to make a documentary. He explained the name and the meaning of each one of the different plants. And it's all circled around taboo. And this is the bouquet he used when they buried his father, who was the chief. So a very powerful taboo that's used there when a chief died. And so yeah, I'd like to start with that. What he said to us was, this is in our blood, all these plants, all these techniques, the taboo. I think everyone knows where we are. Okay, as you know, Melanesia is, it's easier to put it over here. We have rich biocultural and linguistic diversity in Melanesia. We have some of the highest rates of diversity in the world, as well as biodiversity. Land and marine tenure is fundamental and it's found throughout Melanesia, and it underpins TRM, which is traditional resource management. The ancestors were like natural scientists. They arrived and they learned, and they, through trial and error or whatever, they were very attentive. It was all about survival in the beginning when they first arrived. They had no gardens, and they studied the environment and basically encoded it in oral histories. So also a strong heritage of traditional governance communities, the GP system, a rich corpus of traditional knowledge associated with environmental resources. We'll go more into that. Tradition remains a central theme in most people's lives. We call it the traditional economy. I think Honorable Ralph mentioned that yesterday. And the informal economy of rural areas. Largely cashless, and provides resilience, food, and social security for 80% of the population. But development pressure is currently quite intense. We're supposed to change. We're supposed to move into the money economy for some reason. So I question that to some extent. And it's often difficult to reconcile with traditional ways. So it puts pressure on custom. TRM strategies are a central part of the cultural norm. It includes traditional fishing, land use practices, gardening and hunting, gathering. The chiefs consider TRM as a right and responsibility. They've always had it. Okay, so various fisheries, just quickly. We have turtle fishery, and in 1995, fisheries put on a cap on it and said you have to apply to harvest turtles. So they look at the reason it's for cultural purposes. So it's no longer open because of the decline in turtles. Okay, this is a fishery for lobster on the island of Fortuna in southern Vanuatu. And the interesting part of that is that it's only open during the cold season. We'll get back to this cycle of seasons. So he's celebrating getting back to the Naura lobster fishery. Okay. Freshwater fisheries, those streams are full of prawns, call it namurai or namurai? Yeah, the eel, freshwater. And of course fish, lots of freshwater fish. So there's inland there's a lot of freshwater fisheries and beautiful waterfalls. So as far as Vanuatu goes, I'm just going to look at the laws that support TRM. Okay, 1980, independence was finally achieved, and tenure was the main issue, as it usually is. Land and marine tenure is essentially enshrined in the Constitution. The Constitution states all land in the Republic of Vanuatu belongs to the indigenous custom owners and their descendants. The rules of custom shall form the basis of ownership and use of land in the Republic of Vanuatu. Land includes waters within the outer edge of any reef, adjacent to custom land, including all fringing reefs, and the land below those waters when they are considered to belong to custom owners and the custom area. So that's the latest definition of marine tenure. Customary law shall continue to have effect as part of law. And so communities have the rights to manage their own resources, as they've always done in the modern state of Vanuatu. And just to emphasize, tenure is very important. And occasionally it gets threatened. About 6-8 months ago, the government was ready to remove customary marine tenure for some reason. And we all advocated for that not to happen, and eventually they backed down, saying that, oh, we might get to it later. So it's an ongoing threat, really. Okay, traditional management systems developed to protect resources. There were some extinctions with the first arrival of the Lapita people. Some tortoises that were extinct. But basically they had no food with them, or they had some food with them, but they had to plant gardens and build up food reserves. Pigs and chickens eventually came. But yeah, when you get to a place that is so rich, there was never an apex predator like the human being, you don't really have to exercise that much conservation because it's so rich. But after a while, what we see in the archaeological record is that, yeah, the tortoises go extinct and some of the flightless birds, because they're so vulnerable. Remembering that some of the canoes brought rats, and the people brought fire to land clearing, so a big impact on the environment. But not so much as what we see today with bulldozers and the like. But what we see in the archaeological record is that the extinction stopped and the diversity stabilized. But some of the species were smaller shellfish and things like that. But that's normal when people start fishing things for the first time in an area. So yeah, the reefs are covered under customary tenure. And basically it's restricted access. So the reef custodians control access and activity on their reefs. They're the boss. You have to ask if you can go fishing there, as you know. Cool. Can we go back? Seasonal closures, rules associated with different fisheries. And there's many behavioral taboos. Abstinence is one. If you sleep with your wife, you can't go fishing the next day. So that actually reduces fishing pressure. There's a lot of other ones, like if visitors come to your house the night before and they sleep over, you can't go fishing that day. It's just the custom. Because the fisheries is affected that way, in a spiritual way. And the other thing is, when you go fishing, you can't tell anyone you're going fishing, and you quietly just go. And if that's disrupted, come back to the house. And so there's a lot of rules, customary rules associated with not only gardening activities, but also going fishing. One of the very effective strategies is that there are turtles in our eggs, and naura, which is the lobster, and other foods. If you consume them, you can't go to your yam gardens for like up to a week. And as it turns out, both those species are breeding during the hot season. So the turtles come ashore, they're very easy to access, but if you eat them, or their eggs, you can't go to your garden for a week and eat and get the yam trained on the vine, etc. So the point is that before, new yam, in about March, April, was very important. It's like New Year's. And if you came out, what happens at New Year is you present your yams to the chief, and if you come out with wee little tiny yams, it shows that you haven't been following your custom. You've been sneaking around for a deal. But when you present large, healthy yams to the chief, then your family honor is maintained. Huh? So that's the sort of thing that was happening. The other really effective strategy is that on many islands, nearshore reefs are closed when the yam are planted in about September, October, until 6 months later in April. And Matariki is the Pleiades, star group, indicates when you plant and when you harvest your yam. And if you're interested, really? Okay, next slide. If you're interested about the Matariki thing, I can explain it to you. So the 4 pillars of custom supporting TRM in Melanesia: traditional tenure, traditional governance, traditional knowledge, and traditional taboo. And Melanesia has all those things. So it's a perfect combination to manage resources. Rich cultural heritage and traditional knowledge associated with TRL. Everyone knows about the use of alternative foods, the disaster kakai, for example, not normally eaten, but accessed after disasters. Custom calendars for agriculture, hunting, livestock, and fisheries. They encode seasonal activities and cycles. And the old class, they say, you got time to every something. There's a time for everything. Today, everyone wants everything now. Today, tomorrow, etc. But really, you got time to every something. It's calling the seasonal calendar. Also, just to add, language is very important, and we're losing that too. The language encodes a lot of information about the environment. And just scrolling through, here's a yam garden on Ambrium, and this is basically aquaculture. There are fish and prawns in there fertilizing the taro, and so when you want fish or namarai or prawns, you just go and get them. Sago palm, go ahead. And then canoes and all their knowledge about house architecture, disasters and weather prediction and indicators. That's in Medan. And that's in the Carteret. So fabulous canoes. Canoes are free boats if you have the skills to make them. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of that too. We're having a canoe festival down on the sea if you get a chance to. But go ahead. Another one in the Carteret. Okay, so living tradition of resource management as part of custom and customary marine tenure (CMT). The strategies including closed seasons, closed species, closed areas, gear restrictions, size limit, restricted access. These strategies are all used in Western style management, but were already found in Oceania and long predate them. So the ancestors were practicing all these things long before the white man came along with their bag of tricks. Also includes all sacred sites, taboo places, and development of these sites today. Important to revive traditional calendars and custom rules, is monitored and enforced by the communities and the ancestors who are watching over. Because when a taboo is put on, there's pig killing and habit drinking and communing with the ancestors, essentially, to provide more fish, or good gardens, all these sorts of things. So there's a spiritual component to everything that's done. It's holistic, and other positive aspects, equitable sharing of benefits. You must share most of the you straight no more. It's decentralized to community. Highly cost effective, saves the central government lots of money, because it's decentralized to the community. They're handling it, they always have. The community can manage the taboo without large cash inputs. They don't need all the consultants and the money and the rest of it. Pigs and cow in Vanuatu, that's all it takes for a taboo and a community. Okay, just a few examples of taboos around the region. This is near the Karkar area of Papua New Guinea. And next. This is in Laman Bay, where in Vanuatu, where a man, woman, or child, they die. The family puts on a taboo on their traditional stretch of sea. And it's closed for up to 2 years. It depends on how long they want the memory, to honor the memory. Another one up in the banks, taboo, a closure on the sea. Go ahead. And this one I like. It's a tapunas in Papua New Guinea, and he's watching over the taboo. Like I was saying, the ancestors watch over the whole situation, and that's why it's not just. That's a big difference between marine protected areas. There's the police watching over that, but the ancestors are there watching over these ones. Big difference. Don't show me. Go ahead. Okay, just another one in Carteret. And this is just a shot of the traditional knowledge used in catching fish in an area where south of Tana, big sea coming in, so you can't push a canoe up. So they've figured out a way to catch the fish using local materials, and basically they run the fish into that net. There's a little gully there. They know the reef so well. The guys with the bamboo, they come scare the fish in. They pick up the net, and you can choose the fish you want to eat. If you don't like that fish, throw it back in. The point is that traditional fishing is much more sustainable than these long nets where the fish dies by the time you get to it. And go ahead. Maybe just scroll to the summary then. These are just pics showing different traditional methods of fishing. PNG, Vanuatu, right? This is kite fishing in Carteret Islands. Okay, recommendations. Strengthen and support land tenure in Melanesia so communities can continue to manage their resources. Support and revive and strengthen TRM and the use of TK through NGO networks and viral champions. Draw more upon community strengths and capacity like traditional governance, tenure systems, and the use of TK and taboo in promoting community self-reliance. Prioritize the transmission of TK to youth, very important, including through the formal educational system. We need to encourage donors to support TRM and TK. It's one of the greatest legacies of Oceania. It's from the past, but for the future. So teach your children. Thank you too much. Yeah, so thank you too much. And thank you too much. Think about all hard work from all Google, from forum title resource, from time, long time become. You mean now must hold them good number. It's up to us now to keep it alive. Thank you too much.
Thank you, Francis, and a great point actually on keeping alive the traditional knowledge and the traditional stories, which we've heard throughout the morning. We've had this thread of how do we keep our Melanesian cultures and identities alive as we move further into our 21st century, and the role that arts, culture, and traditional knowledge, as Francis said, play.